So Bob Knakal personally sold over 2,300 buildings in Manhattan.
Which is just an unbelievable number.
Right. If you
Wow.
do the math on that, it's roughly one commercial building sold every single week for 40 years.
And that's in one of the most competitive markets on the planet.
Exactly. And independent appraisals showed his firm average closing prices that were like 31.5% higher than their competitors.
That is just staggering.
It really is. But here's the craziest part about all of this. He didn't do it by being, the slickest negotiator in a tailored suit.
Like the stereotypical broker.
Yeah, and he didn't do it by having this magical Rolodex of billionaires either.
Hmm.
I mean, during the 2020 pandemic alone, he spent 220 hours walking every single block of New York south of 96th Street, just cataloging everything.
Because he realized something that most people in his industry never grasp.
Which is what?
He wasn't in the real estate business at all. He was in the information business.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's the true separator. When we look at the highlight reels of commercial real estate, we tend to fixate on the transaction.
Right, the fun part.
Exactly. We see the glass boardrooms, the champagne, the massive commission checks, and we naturally assume that the deal itself is the business.
Like it's a big casino.
Precisely. We view it as this glamorous high-stakes game where you just need to find the right property, flip it, and you're set for life. But that is a complete illusion.
So what is the reality then?
The transaction is just the final, almost administrative echo of years of unglamorous block-and-tackle data gathering.
Which is exactly why we are diving so deep into today's source material. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Our mission today is to unpack this massive 40-year playbook on commercial real estate from Tim Lee.
The founder of Hoff and Lee.
That's right. And his entire premise is just a brutal reality check. I mean, he's very clear that this is not a get-rich-quick seminar.
No, not at all. He actually refers to his methodology as a get-rich-certain scheme.
A get-rich-certain scheme. I love that phrasing.
It sets the tone perfectly.
So today's deep dive is going to map out an entire career life cycle based on his playbook. We're looking at the journey from being what he calls a man at work.
Where you are just grinding to earn commissions.
Right, grinding for fees to the ultimate end game of having your money at work.
Where you actually own the buildings and live debt-free off the passive income.
It's a profound shift in identity, really.
It is. Because as long as you are just earning commissions, your income is entirely dependent on your physical exertion.
You're just selling your time.
Exactly. You are selling hours, and a human being can only sell so many hours before they wear out. I mean, if you get sick or if you just want to take a month off, the money stops cold.
But when you transition to money at work,
When you own the concrete, the dirt, the leases, that money works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
it doesn't need to sleep.
It doesn't. But the catch, of course, is that to cross that bridge from earning fees to owning assets, you have to survive the incredibly harsh runway of a first-year broker.
Yeah, and we're going to walk through how you actually survive that runway today, how you build that information moat, and how you eventually start buying the buildings yourself.
It's a journey.
It really is. But before we get to the millions, the playbook insists we have to define what the job actually is, because apparently vague definitions are like the #1 reason new brokers starve.
They absolutely are.
Like when people ask what you do at a dinner party, the instinct is to say, I do real estate, or I'm in commercial property.
Right, the casual answer.
Yeah, and to me, that sounds perfectly fine. It's conversational. Why is the author so militantly against that phrasing?
Well, think about the silent psychology of the person listening to that answer. Real estate is so broad that it essentially means nothing.
It's too generic.
Exactly. It forces the potential client to try and figure out your competence on their own. The customer has this quiet internal anxiety. They're wondering, can this person actually solve my specific problem?
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so if you give a vague answer, you let that anxiety fester. Lee advocates for radical, almost clinical specificity. You don't say, I do real estate.
What do you say?
You look them in the eye and say, I list, lease, and sell commercial buildings.
Wow. I list, lease, and sell commercial buildings. It leaves literally zero room for misinterpretation.
Precisely. It answers their internal question before they even have to ask it. It instantly reframes the power dynamic.
How so?
You aren't a desperate commodity trying to sound impressive anymore. You are a technician stating your function.
That's a powerful shift.
It is. And that specificity connects directly to the underlying architecture of how wealth is generated here. You aren't hunting for a transaction. The goal is to find clients who give you assignments to find customers.
Okay, I want to pause on that for a second because that feels like a massive paradigm shift. An assignment versus a transaction.
It's the core of the business.
If I'm a selling broker and I'm just running around town with a buyer trying to find them a building, isn't that just as good? I mean, I'm still getting paid, right?
I would argue it's incredibly dangerous for your long-term survival.
Really? Why?
Because if you are just representing a buyer, you are deal-centric. You are reacting to whatever inventory happens to be on the market that day.
You're waiting for things to happen.
Right. You are essentially acting as a highly paid chauffeur.
Yeah.
But when you secure an assignment, meaning you win the listing from the building owner to sell or lease their property, you become the gatekeeper.
Oh, I see.
The listing broker is the undisputed king of commercial real estate.
Because they control the inventory.
They control the deal flow, they control the information, and they set the pace of the market. Everyone who wants that building has to come through you.
That is a huge advantage.
Furthermore, from a pure economic standpoint, the listing broker has the unique ability to earn double the commission for half the physical running around.
Wait, double the commission? How does that work?
Well, if a buyer comes to you directly without their own representation, you capture both sides of the fee. You have leverage.
Wow, okay. That connects perfectly to the playbook's philosophy on sales versus marketing.
Yes, a transition.
The ultimate goal is to evolve from a commodity salesperson into a trusted advisor. Sales is outbound, right? Forcing your story onto a stranger who probably doesn't want to hear it.
The cold call.
Exactly. And marketing is inbound, putting your expertise out into the world so the customer seeks you out.
Which is much more pleasant.
Obviously. When they seek you out, they treat you like an expert, not a nuisance. But I'm looking at this progression, and I have to ask, if inbound marketing and being an advisor is so superior, why wouldn't a smart, ambitious new broker just skip the cold calling phase entirely?
It's a tempting thought.
Right. Why not just build an incredible website, publish deep dive market reports on LinkedIn, start a newsletter, and just, let the clients come to them?
It's a very logical thought, but attempting that as a rookie is a fatal trap.
A fatal trap.
Yes. The reality on the ground is that in your first 2 years, you have no reputation for the market to discover. There is no snowball of past successes to compound.
So nobody is looking for you anyway.
Exactly. If you just build a beautiful website and wait for the phone to ring, you will starve to death before your domain name even indexes on Google.
Ouch.
You have to endure the grueling outbound sales work to survive the initial runway. That sheer brute force prospecting is what pays the light bill today.
So you have to do the dirty work first.
You do. But more importantly, every single one of those cold calls is a data point that slowly builds the marketing machine. The outbound sales work funds your transition into an advisor tomorrow.
Which brings us to the harsh mathematics of survival. Because to ever reach that glorious marketing stage where people are knocking down your door, you actually have to survive the runway.
And it is a long runway.
The arithmetic the author lays out is terrifying, honestly. From the moment you make first contact with a client to the day a commission check actually clears your bank account, a commercial deal takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months.
Yes, it is not a fast process.
So if you are starting at day 0, you literally need 12 months of living expenses banked.
At a minimum. I mean, the failure rate in commercial real estate is notoriously high.
I can imagine.
And it's almost never because the broker lacked charm or intelligence. It was a quiet mathematical failure. They simply run out of cash 30 days before their pipeline is finally ready to pay off.
The playbook describes this downward spiral so vividly. It's like an autopsy of a failing broker.
It really is.
Months 1 through 3 are the honeymoon phase. You're fueled by adrenaline, you bought a nice suit, you're making the calls, everything is new.
You're excited.
Right. But then months 4 through 6 hit. The adrenaline wears off, no one is returning your calls, the quiet erosion starts, and you start inventing reasons to organize your desk instead of picking up the phone.
The busy work.
Yeah, the busy work. And then right around month 7 or 8, you enter what Tim Lee calls the theology phase.
The theology phase is fascinating because it's a purely psychological defense mechanism.
Tell me more about that.
The broker is staring at an empty bank account, and their ego cannot handle the fact that they aren't doing the required work. So they start building a belief system to rationalize their failure.
Like making excuses.
Exactly. They start saying things to the senior brokers like, my submarket is just fundamentally different, or cold calling is an outdated model, people only want emails now.
Or, I'm more of a relationship-driven professional. I don't do high volume.
Yes, exactly that.
And every single one of those statements is basically just a resignation letter written in code.
They are comforting lies.
Ah.
By month 12, that broker has quietly packed up their desk and moved on to a salary job, convinced the industry was broken.
When in reality, they just stopped doing the block and tackle.
They stopped doing the work.
So how do you insulate yourself against the theology phase? You have to execute what the playbook calls the 5 survival principles.
Which are crucial.
And principle 1 is non-negotiable. It is the bedrock of the entire career. Prospecting is the whole job.
Everything else is secondary.
Everything. The marketing, the tours, the paperwork. The playbook establishes a draconian minimum standard. 50 outbound calls a day.
Every single day.
Not 50 on a Tuesday when you feel motivated. 50 as the absolute floor every single working day. But let's be real. If I'm a first-year broker, I have no listings. I have nothing to sell. Making 50 calls a day feels like shouting into the void. What am I actually trying to accomplish on these calls?
Well, you aren't calling to close a multi-million-dollar transaction on a Tuesday morning.
Okay, good, because that sounds impossible.
It is. That's the misconception that creates call reluctance. You are calling to move people very slowly up what the playbook calls the relationship ladder.
So you're organizing chaos into categories.
Precisely.
Let's walk through that ladder. It starts at suspect, right?
Yes. A suspect is nothing more than a name on a list. It's the owner of a building, but you have no idea if they want to sell, if they're bankrupt, or if they're thriving.
You know nothing about them.
Right. Your goal on the phone is just to figure out if they even belong on your radar, if they express even a microscopic sliver of future interest in real estate, they move up a rung and become a prospect.
And a prospect is just someone you continue to monitor over time. But the real jump is when they become a customer.
Right. A customer is someone who finally agrees to do one single transaction with you.
Like leasing a small space.
Yeah. They lease a small space or they let you list a minor property. But a customer is still inherently disloyal.
Disloyal? How do you mean?
They used you because you were convenient at the time. The true milestone is converting a customer into a client.
A client being repeat business.
Exactly. They come back to you for their second and third deals because a genuine relationship has formed.
But the playbook says even a client isn't the top of the mountain. The Holy Grail is the advocate.
Well, the advocate is everything. An advocate is a client who actively defends and promotes your name in rooms you aren't even in.
Wow, like a champion for you.
Exactly. If they're at a country club or board meeting and someone mentions needing space, the advocate says, "You have to call my broker, and I won't let you use anyone else."
They become an unpaid extension of your marketing arm.
They really do. But you cannot manifest advocates out of thin air. You have to sift through thousands of suspects via those 50 daily calls to find them.
And that leads directly to principle 2, which actually makes the prospect of 50 calls a day a lot less intimidating, in my opinion.
Yes, principle 2 is vital.
Principle 2 is own a market. The author insists that depth beats breadth every single time.
This is where most rookies make a massive strategic error.
They cast the net too wide.
Far too wide. They get their license and they think their territory is the entire metropolitan area. They try to be everything to everyone across 5 different counties.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. And as a result, they never build true competence in any one area, and they are constantly spread thin. The playbook dictates that you have to narrow your focus until it feels almost uncomfortably small.
The math here completely upended my view of the industry. You assume that to make a high 6-figure or 7-figure income, you need thousands of deep connections.
You really don't.
The source material explicitly states that you strictly need about 100 building owners and 350 tenants who trust you. That's it. 450 humans.
When you shrink the universe down to 450 specific people, the anxiety of prospecting just evaporates.
Because it's manageable.
Right. Those 50 calls a day aren't random dials into the abyss anymore. You are methodically calling the exact same finite list of people quarter after quarter. You are just filling in a very specific puzzle.
Which brings us to principle 3. The database is the asset. The author uses this phrase, feed the lion.
Feed the lion.
The deals themselves aren't your business, the relationships are. I was reading this section, and it honestly reminded me of a famous management story about the Ritz-Carlton.
Oh, I love that story.
It's so good. They empower any employee, literally a bellhop hired a week ago, to spend up to $2,000 to fix a guest's problem without asking a manager for permission.
Which sounds crazy to a lot of businesses.
Right. If a guest's suit is ruined, the bellhop can just buy them a new one on the spot. It sounds financially insane to give frontline staff that kind of discretionary budget.
But the math supports it.
Exactly. The Ritz does the math. They know the lifetime value of a loyal guest is roughly $250,000. They aren't spending $2,000 to protect a one-night stay. They are spending it to protect a $250,000 asset.
It's brilliant.
Is that the same psychological framework we are supposed to apply to the real estate database?
It is the exact same arithmetic. The CRM, the database, is the central nervous system of your entire career. It is the ledger of your relationship ladder.
So every entry matters.
Immensely. When a rookie makes a call, finds out an owner's lease expires in 3 years, and meticulously logs the correctly spelled name, the exact expiration date, and sets a calendar reminder to call them back 24 months from now.
They're building the asset.
Right.
Right.
But that broker often feels like they're just doing administrative housekeeping.
Like boring data entry.
Yeah, but they aren't. They're logging a future $250,000 commission. The broker with the most obsessively maintained, meticulously fed database will always eventually out-earn the charismatic broker who relies on memory and sticky notes.
You have to feed the lion every single day.
Every day.
But even if you are feeding the lion, there will be months where the phone just doesn't ring. And that requires Principle 5, the mental game.
This is where people break.
You have to learn to measure your inputs, not your outcomes.
Because you have zero control over the outcomes.
Not at all.
You cannot force an interest rate to drop. You cannot force a bank to approve a buyer's loan. You cannot force a seller to accept a realistic price.
So if you focus on that, you'll go crazy.
If you judge your self-worth by whether a deal closed today, the emotional volatility will destroy you.
So what do you focus on?
The only variable you have absolute dictatorial control over is your inputs. Did I make my 50 calls today? Yes or no? If yes, the day was a success.
Period.
Period.
The author brings up this classic Napoleon Hill story about the gold miners. They were digging for months, right? They struck a minor vein, but then it completely dried up.
A very famous story.
Yeah, they kept digging, found nothing, finally gave up in despair, and sold all their heavy machinery to a local junk man for pennies.
And the junk man was smart.
Very smart. Instead of just scrapping the metal, he hires a mining engineer. The engineer looks at the fault lines and tells the junk man to dig exactly 3 feet from where the original miner stopped.
And what happens?
Of course, they hit one of the largest gold deposits in history. The original miners quit 3 feet from gold. In the context of a commercial broker sweating out their first year, where is the gold?
The gold is the callback on day 181.
Day 181.
It's the 13th time you reach out to an owner who has ignored your first 12 letters. It is year 2.
So it's just a matter of time.
The tragedy of the theology phase we discussed earlier is that most brokers who quit aren't actually failing. They're just standing 3 feet from the gold.
Wow, that's heartbreaking.
The pipeline is quietly priming. The market is starting to recognize their name. But because they haven't seen a check in 8 months, they drop their shovels. You have to divorce your daily effort from the immediate result and just keep drilling.
So let's say you survive. You made the calls, you didn't quit, your pipeline finally pays off, and you have some breathing room.
You made it.
Now what? I mean, you can't just be a professional phone dialer forever. You have to transition from a loud rookie to a deeply trusted advisor who brings immense tangible value to the table.
And this is where the playbook shifts into the 6 mastery principles.
Okay, let's get into those. Mastery Principle 1 is basically the barrier to entry for the big leagues underwrite before you advise.
Yes. You cannot sit in a boardroom and advise a multi-millionaire investor until you can do the financial mathematics in your head faster than they can.
You have to know the numbers cold.
Financial fluency is what earns you the seat at the table.
The author has this brilliant, incredibly simple analogy to explain the core math of commercial real estate. He calls it the cow and the milk.
It's a great way to visualize it.
Because if you are coming from the residential world, the valuation model is completely different, isn't it?
Entirely different.
If I own a 4-bedroom house, its value is largely dictated by what the 4-bedroom house down the street just sold for. It's based on comparable sales.
Right, comps.
But a commercial building doesn't work like that. The playbook says a commercial building is a cow, and it is only worth the amount of milk it produces.
The milk is the net operating income, or the NOI.
The NOI, let's break that down.
This is the lifeblood of the industry. The NOI is simply all the rent you collect over a year, minus all the operating expenses you have to pay.
Things like property taxes, insurance, maintenance.
Yes, and management fees. Crucially, this is calculated before you pay your mortgage. It is the pure cash-generating power of the property.
Okay, so the milk is the NOI. But how does the milk actually determine the price of the cow?
This is where we need to talk about cap rates.
Yeah, the author uses this term constantly. Let's pause and break this down. If I am a total novice, what exactly is a capitalization rate, mechanically speaking?
It's a fundamental concept.
Is it essentially just the annual yield I would earn if I bought the building with 100% cash today?
That is exactly the right way to think about it. It's the unleveraged yield.
Unleveraged meaning no loan.
Right. If a building produces $70,000 a year in net operating income, and you buy that building for $1 million in cash, your return on your investment for that year is 7%.
So it is 7 cap building.
Precisely. The cap rate is the market's way of pricing risk.
Pricing risk, how so?
Well, think about a highly secure building with a long-term lease to a national pharmacy. That might trade at a 5 cap.
Because it's safe.
Lower return, but very safe. On the other hand, a rundown warehouse with sketchy tenants might trade at a 9 cap. Higher potential return to compensate you for the headaches.
So if we understand that the value of the building is just the NOI divided by the cap rate, it leads to this profound mathematical reality for brokers.
It's the secret to creating wealth.
The playbook states that depending on the cap rate, for every single additional dollar of NOI you can create, the building's overall value rises by roughly $10 to $15.
It's a multiplier effect.
Let's run a hypothetical out loud so I can really grasp this. I'm a broker. I'm reviewing a client's property. I realize they are paying way above market rate for their landscaping and snow removal, and their leases are slightly under market.
A very common scenario, by the way.
So I step in, I renegotiate the vendor contracts, I raise the rents a tiny bit, and I manage to grow the NOI by just $10,000 a year. What did I just do for the owner?
If the market is valuing properties at a 7% cap rate, you divide that new $10,000 of income by 0.07.
Okay, 10,000 divided by 0.07.
The result is roughly $142,000. You didn't just save them a little cash flow, you literally manufactured of new equity wealth out of thin air through sheer operational efficiency.
That is unbelievable.
That owner can now go to the bank, refinance the building, and pull that $142,000 out in cash.
Just because I saved them some landscaping fees and bumped the rent.
Exactly. When an owner realizes that you possess the analytical skill to find trapped equity like that, you are no longer a salesperson they try to avoid. You are an indispensable wealth creator.
Which perfectly sets up the next mastery principle. Be an advisor, not a transaction chaser.
Playing the long game.
This is all about playing the infinite game. The author points to the philosophy of Chick-fil-A, specifically their second mile concept pioneered by founder Dan Cathy.
Which is legendary in business.
The idea is that providing a hot chicken sandwich efficiently is just the first mile that's the bare minimum expectation. The second mile is the elevated hospitality.
The little things.
Right. The employee walking to your table to refill your drink. The mandatory use of the phrase, my pleasure, instead of no problem. It's about sacrificing a microscopic amount of short-term efficiency to build unshakable long-term trust.
It's prioritizing the lifetime value of the relationship over the speed of the current transaction.
Exactly.
And in commercial real estate, the ultimate second mile. Move the action that cements your status as a true advisor is having the courage to look a client in the eye and tell them not to do a deal.
Okay, I have to challenge this, though.
Yeah.
Because on paper, in a book that sounds very noble and ethical, but let's look at the actual mechanics of a broker's life.
It's tough.
You are working on 100% commission. You do not have a salary. You only eat. You only pay your mortgage if the deal closes. How on earth do you justify looking at a client who is ready to sign and intentionally killing your own paycheck?
It is the hardest thing for a young broker to do, but it is the most lucrative long-term strategy in the playbook.
How so?
You have to understand that your reputation is your only non-renewable, unrebuildable asset.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Exactly. If you are analyzing a deal and it sits in a gray area, maybe the zoning might not hold up, or the environmental report is slightly concerning and you push it through anyway, just so you can collect a commission check on Friday.
You might eat very well that weekend.
You might.
Yeah.
But in a regional tertiary market, the community of commercial owners is tiny. Word travels instantly.
Oh, I see.
If you sell a bad building to a client, you will eventually starve. because nobody will ever trust you again.
You become a transaction chaser in their eyes.
But consider the alternative. You sit down with the client, you lay out the risks, and you say, I know you want this, but the math doesn't work. Walk away.
You kill the deal.
You lose a single commission check today. But what happens in the client's mind? They realize you prioritize their capital over your own livelihood.
That builds massive trust.
You just bought a client for the next 20 years. They instantly move to the highest rung on the ladder. They become an advocate. They will do every future deal with you, and they will force all their friends to use you.
So you trade weekend dinner money for forever money.
Exactly. It's a deferred gratification test.
And when you do finally have a genuinely good deal, the playbook demands you execute the next principle. Keep deals alive.
Because deals want to die.
Deals die 1,000 deaths, right. The financing falls through, the inspection reveals a cracked foundation, the lawyers start arguing over indemnification clauses.
It's always something.
You have to be the ultimate shock absorber. When everyone else is throwing a tantrum at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, you have to be the one calmly working the problem.
And you must pair that internal problem solving with external authority.
What do you mean by external authority?
The playbook explicitly mentions that you must be useful to the broader market, specifically by never saying no to a local journalist.
Why journalists specifically?
Because if a business reporter for the local paper needs to write a story about industrial vacancy rates, they need data.
Right.
If you are the broker who always answers their call, provides accurate APODs, and explains the trends clearly, you become their go-to quoted source.
You become the voice of the market in print.
Exactly. That builds a level of institutional authority that no amount of paid advertising or billboard space can ever buy.
Okay, so we've covered the survival mindset and the mathematical mastery, but how do we actually structure our days to dominate a specific area?
This brings us to the map room concept.
Yes, the map room. And we have to circle back to the legend we mentioned at the very beginning, Bob Knakal.
To understand how to engineer a territory, you have to understand the standard Knakal and his partner, Paul Massey, set in New York starting in the late 1980s.
The gold standard.
They popularized the true neighborhood territory system.
The 24 by 10-foot map we talked about, walking 220 hours during the pandemic. He knew the zoning nuances of a single city block better than the city planners did.
It was an obsession.
But here is the massive practical hurdle for our listeners. Knakal was operating in Manhattan. There are over 27,000 buildings just in his prime area. It's the most dense, capital-rich real estate market on the planet.
True.
If I am a listener operating in a normal tertiary market, a city of 300,000 people with strip malls, auto shops, and scattered office parks, how does this manic Knakal standard actually translate to Main Street?
This is where the underlying math becomes incredibly favorable for the listener in a smaller market.
Really favorable.
Yes. Think about it. In New York, Knakal had to dig his information moat over decades, fighting against fierce, deeply capitalized competition. It was a war of attrition.
Right.
But in a regional market, the total universe of a specific asset class is tiny.
Let's use an example.
Okay, let's say you decide to specialize in flex industrial buildings, those warehouses, with a little bit of office space in the front. In a mid-sized city, there might only be 400 of those buildings in the entire county.
400 buildings total? That's nothing.
It is entirely manageable for a single human being. One disciplined broker can physically drive by all 400 buildings.
Easily.
They can take their own photos, log the condition of the roofs, note which parking lots are full. The moat that took Knakal 20 years to dig in Manhattan can be dug in 12 months on Main Street.
Because the competition isn't doing it?
Frankly, the competition in tertiary markets is usually quite lazy. Nobody else is doing the deep physical information work.
But driving by a building is the easy part. The hard part is figuring out who actually owns the concrete.
Ah, yes. Piercing the veil.
I've looked at property records before. You look up a warehouse on the county tax assessor's website, and the owner isn't John Smith. The owner is 123 Industrial Parkway Holdings, LLC.
Always an LLC.
It's a faceless corporate entity designed for privacy. How does a broke first-year broker actually pierce that LLC to find the human being they're supposed to call?
That is the grunt work that separates the professionals from the amateurs.
Yeah.
You have to become a forensic accountant of public records.
How do you even start?
First, you look at the tax assessor's site to see where the property tax bill is actually mailed. Often, it's mailed to a residential address or a CPA's office.
Okay, that's a clue.
Then you take the exact name of the LLC and you go to the Secretary of State's Business Registry website. You pull the incorporation documents to find the registered agent or the managing member.
And then you cross-reference?
Yes, you cross-reference those names with LinkedIn, with local Chamber of Commerce directories, even with obituary records if it's an inherited property. You pull the thread until a human name falls out.
Man, that is tedious. But once you have the human name for all 400 buildings, you initiate the engine of the territory, the 13-touch system.
The 13-touch system is a religious cadence.
Religious cadence, I like that.
You must touch every single one of those 400 owners once a month, every single year. You mail them something physical monthly, you call them on the phone quarterly, and you attempt to visit them in person annually.
Let me push on the psychology of this, because 13 touches sounds like a lot. Why 13 touches? Why not mail them a really nice, expensive brochure 5 times a year? Isn't 13 times borderline harassment?
If you are sending them junk that says, "Do you want to sell?" Yes, it's harassment.
Mm-hmm.
But a master broker is sending value.
What kind of value?
You are mailing them a report on recent lease rates in their exact zip code. You are mailing them an analysis of a new zoning law. But the number 13 is specifically about the psychology of permanence.
The psychology of permanence, how so?
Commercial owners are constantly bombarded by young, energetic rookies. For the first 12 months of your campaign, that owner assumes you are just another flash in the pan who is eventually going to wash out and quit.
They're just waiting for you to go away.
They're actively waiting for you to disappear. But on month 13, when that next market report arrives, and you call them for the 5th time,
Something shifts.
something fundamental shifts in their brain. They realize you didn't quit. They realize you are a permanent fixture in their microeconomy. That 13th touch is the exact moment their skepticism breaks and real trust is born.
Wow, so you have to survive a whole year of them ignoring you just to earn the right to be trusted.
Exactly.
And when you are making those quarterly phone calls, you are hunting for very specific intelligence. The playbook calls them the 2 golden dates.
The 2 golden dates.
In every conversation, your primary objective is to capture these 2 pieces of information. When does your mortgage loan mature, and when do your major leases expire? Why are these 2 dates the holy grail?
Because every future real estate transaction in your territory is hiding right behind one of those 2 dates.
They are the triggers.
They dictate the owner's motivation. Think about loan maturity, especially in a volatile economy. If an owner has a balloon payment due in 8 months and interest rates have skyrocketed since they took out the loan, they might not be able to afford the refinance.
So they have to sell.
They are a highly motivated seller, and they might not even realize it yet.
And what about the lease expiration?
If you know a building's anchor tenant is leaving in 18 months, you know that owner is going to face a massive cash flow crisis.
Because the milk stops flowing.
Exactly. They either need you to find them a new tenant immediately, or they need you to sell the building before the vacancy destroys its value. If you capture those dates in your CRM, the database literally tells you exactly who to call and when. You are no longer guessing.
Okay, so the system works. You prospected, you survived the runway, you built your territory of 400 buildings, you pierced the LLCs, you executed the 13 touches, and you captured a golden date.
You did the work.
An owner finally says, okay, come to my office, let's talk about my building. This brings us to the deal mechanics. How do you actually win the listing and execute the transaction?
You win the listing by presenting a single, flawlessly executed document, the APOD.
The APOD, the Annual Property Operating Data Sheet.
This is the financial X-ray of the building. It takes the messy, emotional reality of a property and distills it into a clear mathematical picture of what the building currently earns and, more importantly, what it could earn.
The source material gives a brilliantly detailed real-world example of this, and I want to walk through the exact numbers because it illustrates the broker's value perfectly.
It's a perfect case study.
The building is located at 525 North Nevada Avenue. You, the broker, build the UPOD. You calculate all the rent coming in, you subtract the taxes and maintenance, and you see that the building generates exactly $9,614 a year in net operating income.
Which is terribly low.
It's barely producing any milk at all. If we apply that 7% cap rate we discussed earlier, the pure math says the building is only worth about $137,000 based on its current income.
Right, which sounds incredibly low for a commercial property.
It is low, and here is where the problem compounds. You look at the county assessor's data, and the market value is listed at over $525,000.
A huge discrepancy.
And worse, You look at the owner's debt, and they have a $375,000 mortgage on the property. So after paying the mortgage every month out of that tiny $9,600 income, the building has a negative cash flow.
It's bleeding money.
It is actively bleeding about $2,400 a year from the owner's pocket.
If an amateur looks at those numbers, a building worth $137K on paper, but carrying $375K in debt, they see an unsellable disaster. They tell the owner they are bankrupt.
But a master broker.
A master broker looks at that massive gap between the income value and the debt burden and realizes that gap is the entire opportunity.
Because when you dig into the details of the APOD, you realize why the income is so low. 2 of the 11 suites in the building are completely empty.
Vacancies are the killer.
And the tenants who are there haven't had their rent raised in 5 years. They're paying way below the current market average.
Precisely. The broker's job in that pitch meeting isn't to say, let's list your building for a loss.
What's the pitch?
The pitch is, give me the assignment to lease those 2 vacancies. Let me handle the awkward conversations to bring your existing tenants up to market rent, and let me dramatically increase your net operating income.
The broker steps in to rescue the trapped value.
You turn a depressing spreadsheet into a tactical rescue mission. And that strategic plan is what wins you the listing and justifies your fee.
And once you win that listing, you immediately deploy the firm's marketing machine, which the playbook calls impact marketing.
It's a 15-step proprietary process.
Now, we don't need to list all 15 administrative steps, but I want to highlight the mechanics of what actually moves the needle. Yes, you put up the physical signs, and you push the syndication out.
Putting it on CoStar, LoopNet, Crexi.
Right, so that every other broker in the country can see it instantly. But the most aggressive, effective step seems to be the hyper-local phone calls.
Absolutely. The moment the listing goes live, a good broker immediately starts calling every single business owner and property owner within a half-mile radius of the building.
Why limit it to a half mile? Why not call the whole city?
Because statistical probability dictates that the most likely buyer or tenant for commercial space is usually someone who is already operating in that exact neighborhood.
That makes sense.
It's a local business that needs to expand, or a competitor who wants to control the corner. You don't wait for them to see the sign. You force the information in front of them on day one.
And you do all of this with ferocious speed. The Hoff and Lee model talks about closing deals in 45 to 60 days, whereas the industry average can drag out for 6 months.
Because time kills deals.
As the author brilliantly puts it, a deal that closes in 60 days instead of 180 is a deal with 120 fewer days to die.
It's so true. Every extra week a deal is pending is another week for a bank to panic, a roof to leak, or a buyer to get cold feet.
So you're moving fast, you're dialing the neighbors, and you find a tenant for those empty suites on Nevada Avenue. Now, we have to talk about the actual paperwork, because if you don't deeply understand lease structures, you will destroy the owner's wealth and lose their trust instantly.
Leases are the foundation.
The playbook breaks down 3 main lease structures: triple net, gross, and modified gross. I'm trying to wrap my head around how these practically impact an owner.
Let's use an analogy.
Okay, is a triple net lease, often written as NNN, is that essentially the commercial real estate equivalent of flying on one of those ultra-budget airlines.
How do you mean?
Like, you buy the incredibly cheap base ticket, but the moment you get to the airport, you have to pay extra for your carry-on bag, you pay for a bottle of water, and you pay a fee just to pick your seat.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. Let's refine the mechanics of it. In a triple net lease, the tenant agrees to pay a relatively low base rent, that's the cheap airline ticket.
Right.
But the tenant also assumes total financial responsibility for the 3 nets, which are the property taxes, the building insurance, and all the common area maintenance.
So if the roof leaks, the tenant pays to fix it.
If the roof leaks, the tenant pays. If the county raises property taxes by 20%, the tenant absorbs the cost.
Wow. So for the landlord, a triple net lease is the dream. It's pure, insulated, predictable profit.
Exactly. The landlord receives a clean check every month, completely insulated from inflation or unexpected repair bills. The tenant assumes the operational risk.
Got it. So if triple net is the budget airline, what is a gross lease? Is that like the all-inclusive resort?
Yes, perfect comparison. In a gross lease, the tenant writes one single flat check every month. Let's say it's $5,000.
And that's it.
That's it. Out of that $5,000, the landlord has to pay the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the snow removal, the landscaping.
So it's simple for the tenant.
It is wonderfully simple and predictable for the tenant. But the landlord eats 100% of the operational risk. If there's a brutal winter and the snow plowing budget quadruples, the landlord's profit for that year might be entirely wiped out.
And the modified gross lease is the negotiated middle ground between the two.
Correct. Usually in a modified gross lease, the tenant pays a base rent plus a very specific proportional share of the operating expenses.
How is that calculated?
It's often pegged to whatever the expenses were during their first year in the building, known as the base year. If expenses rise in year 2, the tenant pays their share of the increase.
Understanding which of these three structures best protects the specific financial goals of your client is the fundamental difference between being a strategic advisor and just being a signature gatherer.
It really is.
So let's pull all the way back.
True.
What does this all mean? We've survived the brutal 50 call days. We've meticulously built the database. We've mastered the APOD. We've structured the leases. And you are finally making a fantastic high six-figure living.
You're successful on paper.
But according to Tim Lee, you are still failing the ultimate test. You are still just a man at work.
You're still on the treadmill.
You are still trading your physical time and your expertise for commission checks. If you stop working, the income stops. We have to reach Section 6, the end game.
The whole point of the journey.
How do we cross the chasm from earning commissions to having money at work?
This is the destination the entire playbook is driving toward. The commission checks were never the end goal. They were simply the seed capital required to reach this stage.
So the goal is ownership.
The ultimate objective is ownership. The author lays out a brutally simple, undeniable 4-point success plan.
Okay, let's hear it.
Number 1, buy commercial property by hook or by crook. Number 2, pay down the debt aggressively. Number 3, pay off the debt entirely. Number 4, live completely debt-free off the passive cash flow.
It completely shatters the traditional middle-class script we are all handed for retirement.
It does.
We are all taught to go to school, get a salary job, put 10% of our paycheck into a mutual fund, and just cross our fingers for 40 years. You hope the stock market doesn't crash the year you turn 65, and you hope inflation hasn't eaten the purchasing power of your nest egg.
It's a retirement plan based entirely on hope and variables you cannot control.
It's terrifying when you think about it.
But in this playbook, retirement is not an age. It is not 65. Retirement is strictly an arithmetic problem based on what he calls the hurdle rate.
The hurdle rate. Let's define that clearly.
Your hurdle rate is the exact amount of money you need to run your life every month. It's your mortgage, your groceries, your car payment, your kids' tuition.
So let's say your hurdle rate is $12,000 a month.
Okay. The exact day that the passive cash flow from your commercial buildings hits $12,001 a month, you are retired.
Whether you are 65 years old or 38 years old.
Exactly. Nobody sends you a gold watch. Your concrete assets just quietly start outworking you.
Your buildings start outworking you. I love that phrasing. And to achieve that, he suggests a very specific timeline, the 10-year cadence.
Because you are a listing broker who has spent years walking your 400 building territory, you have the ultimate unfair advantage in capitalism.
Information asymmetry.
You see the best deals months before they ever hit the open market. The cadence is simple. Buy one building a year for 10 years, use bank leverage to acquire them, and use the cash flow to pay off the debt fast.
And when you are deciding which buildings to buy, you are utilizing the 5 distinct ways a commercial property pays you. It's a multi-dimensional wealth vehicle.
It's not just about the rent.
Let's break down the mechanics of those 5 ways. The first 2 are obvious. Number 1 is cash flow, the rent left over after expenses, and the mortgage.
The milt.
Right. Number 2 is appreciation, the general tendency of real estate to go up in value over decades due to inflation and market demand.
Both very standard.
But the next 2 get a little complex for people outside the financial world. Number 3 is depreciation, which the author calls a massive tax shield. How does a building losing value actually make me wealthy?
This is the magic of the tax code.
Yeah.
The IRS recognizes that physical buildings wear out over time, roofs degrade, HVAC systems break.
Sure.
So they allow you to deduct a portion of the building's purchase price from your taxable income every year, typically over 39 years for commercial property.
So it's a paper loss.
It is a phantom expense. You didn't actually write a check for that depreciation, but it lowers your taxable income on paper.
Wait, so I could be making money but show a loss?
You can have a building generating massive positive cash flow in reality, but thanks to depreciation, you show a loss on your tax return, meaning you legally pay 0 income tax on that cash flow.
Incredible. And number 4 is amortization. Let's ELI 5 that. Explain it like I'm 5.
Amortization simply means the paying down of loan principal. When you have a mortgage on a commercial building, you aren't paying it. Your tenants are paying it.
Oh, Bryce.
Every month, a portion of their rent goes to the bank to reduce your loan balance. Over time, they are quietly buying the building for you, increasing your equity every 30 days without you lifting a finger.
But the fifth way a property pays you is the most critical one. It's the one that requires all the grueling 13-touch database feeding work we discussed. Number 5 is forced equity.
Forced equity is the wealth you capture on the very day you purchase the building, simply because you bought it below its intrinsic optimized value.
Like the Nevada Avenue example.
Yeah.
You buy the building knowing it's mismanaged.
Exactly. And the only reason you know it is mismanaged, the only reason you know the rents are under market, the only reason you know the zoning just changed to allow for retail
Is because you've spent years tracking those 400 buildings.
you know the farm better than the seller does. That information asymmetry allows you to force equity into the deal on day one. You don't have to wait 30 years for the market to appreciate. You manufacture the wealth immediately through competence.
It perfectly connects the entire playbook. The terrifying 50 cold calls you made as a starving rookie in year 1 are the exact mechanical reason you have the intelligence to spot the mispriced building in year 7.
It is one continuous compounding machine.
We've taken you from the absolute bottom, the rookie sweating over a hand-addressed envelope, to the absolute peak of living debt-free off a multi-million-dollar portfolio.
It's quite a journey.
But there is one final, incredibly provocative strategy in the source material that I want to leave you with, because it answers the most glaring question. How does a relatively broke broker actually buy their first million-dollar building if they don't have a massive down payment?
It's a strategy called the life transition sale.
The life transition sale.
And it is the ultimate testament to the power of relationships.
Okay, imagine you've worked your territory religiously, you know all the owners, you identify an aging owner in their late 70s, they are tired of managing tenants, they want to retire. Or maybe they just want to simplify their estate for their children.
Very common scenario.
If they put the building on the open market and sell it for a lump sum of cash, they are going to get hit with a devastating capital gains tax bill, which they despise.
Nobody wants that tax bill.
Furthermore, what they actually want isn't a giant pile of cash to manage. They want dependable mailbox income for themselves and for a spouse who might outlive them.
So as the broker who has earned their absolute trust over a decade, you offer them exactly what they want.
Instead of going to a traditional bank and begging for a commercial loan you probably can't qualify for, you structure a seller-carry deal. The seller essentially becomes the bank.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that.
You take ownership of the building with little or sometimes zero money down. You sign a promissory note agreeing to pay the seller a set amount of principal and interest every single month for the next 10 or 20 years.
For the seller, this spreads their tax burden out over decades, saving them a fortune.
And it solves their income problem.
More importantly, you become a highly dependable, tax-advantaged annuity for their estate. They get the monthly check and total peace of mind without having to fix another leaky roof.
You get the million-dollar asset with no cash out of pocket. They get the secure retirement income. But the only reason they agree to finance $1 million to you without a bank is because they know your character.
Your reputation for honesty, which you built by occasionally killing bad deals and prioritizing their needs for years, is your actual down payment.
It's a beautiful full-circle realization. It proves that despite the spreadsheets, the APODs, the complex cap rate math, and the lease structures, commercial real estate isn't actually a business about concrete and steel at all.
It is entirely a business of solving human problems.
Solving human problems. It brings us right back to where we started. The illusion is the glamorous skyscraper, the tailored suit, and the overnight flip.
The reality, the unglamorous truth, is that wealth is built on a profound understanding of numbers, relentless daily discipline, and the patience to build unshakable trust, one person at a time.
Until that foundation is so strong, it can support you and your family for the rest of your life.
The millions are just a byproduct of being immensely, relentlessly useful to others over a long period of time.
And that is something to think about no matter what industry you're in.